if we are presented with the opportunity to contribute to restoring nature in the place that we love, most of us say yes. In fact, our experience in the Conservation Collective is that around 2/3 of people say yes when we create local foundations. So these work, this is number 18 or 19, I forget, of our local foundations. In each of the other places where we've created a foundation like this, it has grown stronger and bigger with each passing year because people love it. They love giving money to restore the place that they love, to restore the natural vibrancy of that place. And so the model is very simple. We bring together groups of people who have the ability to share some money and to share some time. And we direct that money to the most effective local initiatives in that place. And every place has these initiatives. There are people everywhere you care to look, including in this coast in Croatia. There are people who are working in their free time, volunteering to do good things. Often they have a day job. They may be a banker or a lawyer or a waiter in their daytime, and they spend the evenings or the weekends fighting for a particular species or fighting for a particular ecosystem or what have you. And these people are often working with no budget, no funding, very little support. And so if you give them relatively modest sums of money, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 a year, it's like rocket fuel. If you find the good ones, because they can take time out of work, they can get technical expertise, legal help, they can print posters or leaflets and mobilize people. They can travel to the state capital or the national capital in order to meet with politicians. They can do amazing things. If you find the right initiatives and give them modest sums of money, they can move mountains. Don't forget, it was Greenpeace who saved the whales. And globally, in the 1970s, on $30,000 or $40,000 a year, Greenpeace catalyzed a global civil society movement, which culminated in a global ban on whale hunting. And the whales were on the brink of extinction, and now they're recovering worldwide. For those people who gave money to that campaign, it was the best money they ever spent. And in every place, you'll find initiatives like this, whether it's campaigners who are looking to protect monk seals and their habitat, and study them and protect them and get politicians to change the law around them, or groups that are looking to secure a ban on single-use plastics, or maybe groups working towards sustainable agriculture or more sustainable forms of fishing and so on. These kinds of initiatives are, if you look for them, you find them. And if you find the good ones and give them some money, you can create enormous change. So that's the purpose of this, is to bring together a group of people who want to spend a little bit of money and a little bit of time supporting the best nature recovery initiatives along this exceptionally precious coast, with the goal of restoring the natural vibrancy of this place so that it hums with life like it used to 60, 70, 80 years ago in a time that we never saw. It can be better than it's been for decades. What we're hoping is to bring you together and ask that you consider joining us, and also that you find friends that you know, contacts that you know, local businesses. As these foundations grow bigger, local businesses become a very important part of the mix. The Ibiza Environment Foundation derives 1/3 of its income each year from local restaurants. They put €1 on the bill for each person who eats there, and it's hundreds of thousands of euros now. And Ibiza is on its way to being an exemplar of sustainable island management. Extraordinary recovery happening with the Posidonia grass and the fish stocks and the traditional farming practice and so on that island because of the foundation we started there. So in due course, we want businesses to support as well. So I guess this is like a mobilization call, because we haven't decided to create this foundation yet. We in the Conservation Collective know how to do this. We'll put up 30,000 euros to get it moving. We'll provide the legal and the administrative and the marketing support. We'll help build this thing. But what we really need is a critical mass of 8, 10, 12 individuals who want it to happen. And then we'll make it happen. So we're in movement building stage at the moment. Jade, what would you like to talk about now?
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ben. So next, we're going to have a presentation from Marko Pecarevic, who is the local expert environmental consultant who has written the scoping study for us. We always up a scoping study as the kind of basis of our future strategy when we start a new foundation. So over to Marko to introduce himself and talk you through some of the highlights. And I'm just going to share his slides. Give me 1 second.
Hello, everybody. I hope you hear me well and clear. I'm calling from a location that doesn't have the best of internet connection, and I'm on my phone. So, Jade, okay, thanks.
Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, so without further ado, I'll just go into the presentation. I'll just, for the sake of context, I am Marko Pecarevic. I'm from Croatia. I've been working in nature conservation sector in different capacities for the last 20-ish years. And I have my roots from the island, even though I'm not personally from there. So you're all here because you have an interest in the Dalmatian Islands. So either you've been there and you loved it, or maybe you're from there. And in this sense, I don't think I need to oversell the beauty and the importance of the islands to you, but I'll hopefully provide some structure that's going to be guiding this foundation. So if you can advance, please. The next slide, I meant. Yes, thank you. So, no, it was the previous one, but sorry, there's a lag on my side. So the Croatian islands, I mean, I guess you're all mostly familiar with this. They form a coherent unit in the Croatian archipelago. So not all of the Croatian islands would fall under the Dalmatian Islands, but the ones that we are considering as part of this consist of around 14 inhabited islands, and there are numerous islets and rocks and different types of formations which also can pass as islands, but are not the focus of this work. And why did we choose on the Dalmatian Islands as such? And I mean, there are many reasons, and I'm sure that everybody has their own motivation. I can perhaps share some of my motivation. So as I've said, two of my grandparents are from the Dalmatian Islands, and ever since I was little, I was listening to the stories about it, and how it was like, what the life was on them. I was hearing of hardships, of scarcity, of war, but also of community, land, food, and unspoiled nature. And because of them, that these islands, the two islands that I have my roots from, became part of my identity, and it makes me sad to see the not only unused but actually abused potential that the islands have, and also how easily some of the millennia-long traditions and practices are being abandoned on them. Okay, so we can now move onwards. So going into more technical parts, we have considered three main aspects of the Dalmatian nature, of the nature of the Dalmatian Islands. First is the terrestrial, then we have the marine, and then we have the freshwater part. So the Dalmatian, going to the terrestrial one, they include all types of, various types of habitats. So beaches, salt marshes, there's cliffs, there's dry grasslands, there's all kinds of deciduous forest types, maki, garrigue, and not to go into overly botanical details. Also, the low intensity agriculture that's being practiced there, or that has traditionally been practiced, allows for a particularly high agrobiodiversity with many unique varieties of many cultivars, most notably grapes and olives, but there's many others as well. And the Dalmatian Islands are a habitat to around 160 endemic flora species and at least 70 threatened species of animals. And overall, and these numbers are always a rough estimate, the Dalmatian Islands host more than 2,700 species. One thing that needs to be mentioned also when we talk about the terrestrial part is the karst. So the karst landscape, that's the dominant type of landscape in Dalmatia as a whole, but most likely the only one on the islands, is a very fragile. It's a semi-porous rock, and in combination with the Mediterranean type of climate, it doesn't have high resilience to repeated disturbance. So when we talk about forest fires, for example, the repeated forest fires do significantly more damage on this type of habitat than they would elsewhere. But also other environmental practices are also much more detrimental than they would be somewhere else. But I'll get on that later. Then talking about marine, well, the Dalmatian Islands are a subset of the overall marine biodiversity of the Adriatic, of course, and they host a large diversity of marine habitats, and many of those are endangered not only in the context of the Adriatic, but actually in the Mediterranean as such. And here I would primarily single out the Posidonia seagrass meadows as important habitats for many reasons. Some of them include primary production, so assimilation of CO2, but also because many organisms, including those that are very economically important, use them as a feeding ground or a place for reproduction or just finding shelter in them. Obviously, there's other types. You can see the picture here of some Gorgonia coral. There's underwater caves and all kinds of other things. And talking about freshwater, it's a little bit counterintuitive because those of you that know, freshwater is not the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about the Dalmatian Islands, but they host many small freshwater bodies, which have been used continuously, not all of them, but some since the Neolithic times. And so we're talking about small wetlands or small ponds or small watering holes. I emphasize the small because we are talking sometimes areas of 20 square meters. But nevertheless, these habitats are very important because they form hubs of island terrestrial biodiversity, because water is so scarce that wherever there is water, there is life around. So they're important locally, but they're also important regionally or even wider than that, because they are important stopover sites for migratory birds. Okay, Jade, please, we can move on to the next one. The culture of the Dalmatian Islands, this foundation or this whole endeavor deals primarily with nature conservation or environmental conservation, but in the context of Mediterranean, just as in many other places, it's difficult to differentiate nature from culture, or because there is such a strong mutual influence of both towards the other. And I'll just single out perhaps the Mediterranean mosaic type of landscape, which, if you can imagine, consists of small agriculture plots, some forests, there is some pastures, and different features which all form a coherent unit within the landscape. But also this mosaic can extend itself to the socioeconomic structure of the islands, and they all have been developed over centuries to form a coherent unit. And this is for various reasons starting to disappear, or not starting to disappear, but is largely disappearing because of global change, because of the depopulation of the islands, but also because of effects of climate change. I mean, when we talk about culture, the culture is also intrinsically linked to the sea. So there are fishing communities, and there is a very strong relationship to the sea and to what the sea can offer. And even though this still exists there, it's also largely disappearing in the way in which it was before, and is largely turning towards tourism. So all of this rich tradition that I was talking about is to a large extent being replaced by a monoculture of tourism, where basically earning as much money within as short a period of time is what's taking place there. And very often, because of this loss of connection of people to the landscape, is not done in an environmentally sustainable way. We can move on to the next one, please. So I'll move on to the challenges. The challenges on the Dalmatian Islands are not exotic in a sense that they are unique to them, but as I've said, because they are islands and because of the context of the ecological context, many of these things are much more detrimental on the islands than they would be elsewhere. So we have the effects of climate change, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but you can just imagine that whatever the effects are elsewhere, the effects on the islands are going to be even harder, because the system is more fragile. Any forest fire that comes because of this is going to be more detrimental. Any loss in precipitation is going to be more detrimental. And yes, climate change is a big problem. The second one I single out is waste management. Waste management is problematic because, first of all, there is a lack of facilities for treating waste on the islands. And secondly, it's because of this high seasonality in the amount of garbage being or waste being generated, because during the summer times, you get sometimes more than 5 times the population of the islands due to the number of tourists that come on them. And this high number of tourists concentrated in a relatively short period of time, around 2 months, is something that's also exacerbating most of these challenges. So waste management, wastewater treatment, effect of forest fires, this is all concentrated. The dangers of that are concentrated in a small amount of time, and sometimes in relatively small areas. The problem of overfishing is not something that's intrinsic to the islands, and the sources of overfishing are not on the islands themselves, most likely, but still there are communities on the islands that depend on the marine resources, and it's any effort to address the problem of overfishing needs to include local people and seeing the solutions that they have, or the traditional approaches to management of marine resources that existed before. There is the monoculture of tourism that I've talked about before, which affects all aspects of economy, ecology, and social relations. And we have the destruction of the coast, which takes 2 forms. One is constructing things on the coast, pouring cement on the coast, and the second one, which is very, very dominant in the last couple of years, is creation of artificial beaches. Again, something that many local organizations try to address, but is very often not addressed by the relevant authorities. Okay, we can move on to the next. So taking all of this into consideration, we have decided to focus the work of this fund on 3 discrete but overlapping lines of work. One deals with the conservation of habitats and biodiversity. The second one deals with what we're calling the regenerative land use. And the third one is sustainable development and resource management. And while I'm on this slide, the intention of the fund is to support local initiatives. So all of the projects will need to have strong local ownership. The idea is not to support organizations, well, to the extent that it's possible, because sometimes there isn't enough capacity on the islands. But the idea is not to support organizations that work from elsewhere and just have a line of work on the island themselves. And in this sense, the Conservation Collective provides a funding mechanism that currently doesn't exist in Croatia, which is strategic and flexible support for locally led initiatives. And I'm emphasizing this flexible because many of these small organizations just don't have the capacity to apply for EU funds or some other types of funding which are available. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. And these are some examples of the types of initiatives that would or could be supported financially. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is more to give you a flavor or a sense of types of projects. So I don't know if I need to read through them. You can see, but it would be about finding more information about what is actually present on the island, because although there are studies being done, it's not really, there's a lot of missing information, which is then needed in order to be able to manage and conserve these species or habitat more effectively. Then something about monitoring and recording of the new threats. There are many initiatives on the islands that do these types of activities, so kind of watchdog type of organizations, but they need financial support. Talking about the regenerative land use, this is mostly about dealing with high nature value agricultural activities and areas. So bringing additional value to the traditional agricultural practices, but also some other things which are related to it, like dry stone architecture, connecting livestock farming with tourism, or producing or partnering with restaurants in creating local menus so that they can rely on local produce and not relying on things which are imported from elsewhere. And we can move on to the next one. And then we have the sustainable development and resource management. This is the line of work that deals that could include things like transition to renewable sources of energy. So raising awareness on that, or providing or funding some small demonstration projects, increasing capacity for that. We can also include energy cooperatives, helping them set up, helping them in some raising their capacity, talking about impact of tourists on the island environment. So maybe education of tourists on how they can, through their own behavior, limit their own impact on the environment. So making informed choices about where they stay, what they eat, how they behave, and these types of things. And then also one of the issues that's present on the islands is this drain of people that are just leaving the islands because of lack of any lack of economic opportunities for them. So raising capacity of people to stay there is also something that would be interesting. And in that sense, we have, for example, support for development of these mobile applications, which would be developed by students who are living on the islands, having some initiatives aiming at facilitating refurbishing and repairing of different things, so from tools to household equipment, with the primary idea of reducing the amount of waste, but also strengthening local capacity. And then also going back to the waste, trying to reduce the amount of waste that's created by promoting and demonstrating composting techniques on the island. And I think that wraps it up for me. Yes, and of course, thank you for my side. Sorry if I rushed through this. There's a lot of information, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you so much, Marko. Hopefully those of you here today have seen the scoping study, which is the kind of detailed report that Marko has just talked us through the highlights of, but we can share it in the chat, the executive summary version, and then if anyone wants to read the full version, we can also make that available. Thanks, Marko, for laying that out so clearly. I wanted to hand over now to Vladimir Modaus, and I realized I should have checked beforehand how to pronounce the Croatian surnames, because I've probably done that completely wrong, who is, who's going to speak to you a bit about why he's getting involved with this project.
Thank you, Jade. You're not the first one who broke her tongue on trying to pronounce my last name, so it's okay, not the last one. But anyways, very, very briefly on my motivation when I got involved, as opposed to Marko, who has long background in environment protection and projects. I come from finance background with some 20 years in banking, most of which time I spent actually in London, and that's how I know Ben. And Ben reached out to me last year with this idea to do something in Croatia, and I absolutely loved it from the very start. He's obviously done it for a number of different locations together with Jade, and as he mentioned, 17, 18 locations already. And he's spoken to you about why and what his motivation was to do it. For me, obviously, on one side, I absolutely love the idea, how it's organized. I love how the impact is created and results that have been achieved, and how with little amounts of money and with little steps, big results can be achieved. And that I found really inspiring and fascinating, and by all means immediately said I would love to support it and to help it on one side. Whereas on the other side, being Croatian, living abroad, number of times I brought my friends to visit the Croatian coast. Everybody loved it, as you all know. It's gorgeous landscapes, and we all love to come back to that place. And in same way, I would love to come back to it years to come, not only for myself, but for the next generations of our kids also to enjoy it. So when you combine the two, if there are things to do and we can help, I'm all in to support it, and immediately said to Ben, definitely, I want to be a part of this, and I'll help. So at the same, not with my background in environment and protection, but we'll try to, with my contacts and network, motivate and get people or corporates who I deal with jump on board and support this going forward. So that's in a way, in a short, brief summary, where I come into the story, and will continue to push forward.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Vlad. Thanks, everyone. So that's the kind of formal presentation section over, and just wondering whether anyone has any questions for any of the speakers or for me about the Conservation Collective model and where we're at. And I guess we take a deathly silence as a good thing, but yeah, or any other sort of feedback would be great. We'd love to hear what everyone thinks.
I've got 1,000 questions, and also none of them there's a lot of processing to do.
Okay.
I'm Ivanka Majic. I have a very Croatian name and a very English accent, and I live on the island of Brač, and I'm a last-minute interloper because somebody forwarded me the invitation, but I've lived here for now, this is my 4th year, and I try and organise a lot locally, so we do beach cleans and things, and so if to summarize, there is money available for initiatives. Is that the bottom line, or help towards channels for money, or what's the offer and what's the ask?
Okay, we can clarify that. So the stage, yes, there will be money available for local initiatives and projects. The stage we're at right now is that we're still raising that money and we're still sussing out whether there is the need. And I think Marko's report has basically outlined that there is the need. You know, we have got 8 Mediterranean funds up and running, and 1 launching soon, and 3, as well as Croatia, we're also looking into doing this in Malta and Sicily. So there is without a doubt the need in the Mediterranean. There is so little funding available, and this model does work there. What we need to do is find, let's say, 5 to 10 more funders to join our kind of initial crew. Once we have them, then we will launch, and a smaller group of that group of funders will form a steering committee, and we will put out a call for proposals so that any local group can make applications. What I can't quite give right now is a timeline. We'd love to get it done as soon as possible, but we're in that kind of chicken and egg fundraising phase.
So we're at this stage, we're talking about finding people with money who could join effectively a trust kind of a sort of a trustees kind of a model. So
what normally happens is initially you have 8, 10, 12 people who can afford to give 5, 10, 15,000 or thereabouts per year. And some of those agree to join a steering committee. Not all. Some just say, send me the newsletters. If I'm around, I'll meet the executive director for a coffee once a year to find out what's going on. But fundamentally, I just give my donation and leave it there. And some agree to join a steering committee, which meets quarterly, usually on Zoom, maybe once in person a year, and decides, with guidance from the executive director, how to allocate the funding. And it's really fun, by the way. It's addictive that, you know, 6 or 8 of the 12 would meet 4 times a year and figure out where to send the money and receive updates on how earlier projects have gone. And that is extremely rewarding and fun. Over time, local businesses start to join, and you end up with partnerships locally with hotels, restaurants, and other local jewelry designers, whoever happens to live in the area. We have some strange partnerships across some of the other foundations.
Well, I'm already talking to a couple of the kind of sailing and chartered groups who visit Croatia, who want to put this out to their boat owners and their guests.
But fundamentally, the new charity is not going to do anything. We're not going to usurp the role of existing foundations, existing charities. This new foundation is about raising money to support local initiatives. It's like a little ATM machine for the best local environment initiatives. But we don't just want those who are wealthy to be involved. We want those who can help us in other ways. For example, by finding great projects for us, who can find new supporters for us, people who are well networked, people who can host a drinks party or a dinner in the islands or elsewhere. We need to just create a sense of buzz and a sense of momentum, and then the thing will just grow. The problem is, if we start too small, it's much harder. So the lesson we've learned in other places is you have to have a critical mass, and then it will definitely work.
Okay. And in your experience of these other scenes, nobody else is talking. I shall carry on for a moment. In your experience, is it as part? So you've mentioned companies that have a vested interest in bringing people here who have their brand is somehow attached to Croatia. In your experience, is it people that have is it more successful if they're local funders rather than or does it not matter, or is that not a pattern you've observed? So
having the local connection, the local connection is key, but they don't have to be locally based. Right. I mean, we have an organization in Menorca where the majority, it's very rare, the majority of the steering committee actually are Spanish. But in most places, it's a very international crew, and it can be diaspora based in different cities around the world. We've already talked with Marko and Vlad about doing another of these calls at a time of day when the Californian and the Australian Croatian diaspora can attend, because we know there's a sort of a big gathering there, but this isn't a great time of day for them.
No. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a combination of people born in the place, you know, who live elsewhere, you know, a Croatian banker or lawyer in New York or London or elsewhere, or those who are foreign who've gone there and fallen in love with the place. That's generally the people who do it. And then, of course, when the foundation becomes more established, 2-3 years down the line, we become the obvious partner for people who wish to spend money in that part of the Mediterranean, but don't know how. So for example, the Norwegian Retailers Association just gave $450,000 to our Sri Lanka Environment Foundation for work on plastic pollution in Sri Lanka. Or there's a foundation called, it's a Dutch foundation called Adesium. They wanted to work on Posidonia issues in the Balearic Islands. So they gave the money to our local foundations there. Sunseeker, the yacht company, they also gave money to us for distributing towards creation of marine protected areas in the Mediterranean. So hopefully we can become a portal for larger funders, corporations, big foundations to invest money in nature recovery in that part of the Adriatic. But that's once we've got a bit of a track record and a bit of a story to tell. By the way, I'm going to say goodbye to you all. I have to go to another meeting, but Jade will stay with you. And I'm so grateful to everyone. Thank you very much. And particularly to Marko for his brilliant presentation. And I look forward to us meeting all together getting drunk together in Hvar or somewhere like that in the coming months or years. Bye, everyone. Brač, we'll come to Brač, yes.
Brilliant. Any last questions or ideas, ideas about thinking kind of projects or themes we should be looking at? Has Marko kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of the needs of the islands? Do you think we've missed anything?
I thought it was great. And the other thing I was thinking about was that actually the next 3 months are probably crucial, because I think that's when the actual kind of physical mingling actually occurs. And when a lot of people who have an interest in the area and who come, but who generally don't think about that much for the rest of the year, but then they spend their summers there. And who I found quite, their interest is once they're there, and then once they go somewhere else, it sort of gets slightly forgotten. But if you can catch them while they're there, I think then they would be inclined to get involved. So there needs to be a push for it now, because I think come the autumn, things will again, people get sidelined in all kinds of different ways in different aspects of their life.
I think that's a very good point. I'm sure Marko wouldn't mind coming along to a couple of drinks parties to talk about about our plans.
Jade, if I may, Silva.
Hey, Silva, how are you?
As my name indicates, I'm myself Croatian as well. Not really, actually, but I had the chance to spend years living in Croatia and close to those islands, and I'm super happy with the result of Marko's study. I think he put it in a nutshell, and one of the things I was very interested in was like, where is gonna be the limit? So addressing those Dalmatian islands, I think that's a strong push. I was living in Split, and all these, like, I think that the Dalmatian islands, they might be the ones that needed the most, this little push. I really liked when Ben said that the fund will do nothing. I mean, we'll just try to push where it's needed. And that's actually what we're doing with Smilo. We try to support local communities where some action is taking place, and to help them take their future in their own hands, but they do need money sometimes. So we're very happy to have you guys aboard with us. So we have very few islands we're working with in Croatia, but we'll be, I think, supporting the communities to look towards the funds that will be available there, because I think that what you're offering as a set of different focus teams, again, very relevant. And not I think that's what I like the most. It's not narrowed down to having tourism not just in summer, or try to have just like sustainable energy on island. I don't know, but some very concrete example that could also help the local actors to better steer what they're doing. I think that's what I see beyond. It's a roadmap for local actors to work better. So I don't know. So we'll support this definitely, and we look forward for the next steps.
Brilliant, thank you. So I don't know if anyone's got any last questions or comments, or whether we should wrap up, which we've done very efficiently in 45 minutes. So that's great. Obviously, we'll send out a kind of follow up afterwards, but I guess, you know, as to kind of reiterate our call to action, we're looking for funders, we're looking for people to spread the word, for useful contacts, for kind of passionate local environmentalists, for organizations. We should be virtual networking. It's a depressing term, but you know, who Marko and I can get on the phone with as much as possible over the next sort of few months, and then hopefully we'll have when we've built up our networks in both the funders and the project pipeline area, then we'll kind of get a stronger idea of when we can hit the green button and when we can launch, and then we'll host sort of maybe a launch event in Zagreb, in London, in the islands. Sort of, it would be ideal to do it in the late summer, Susie, but I think it might still be this kind of earlier movement building at that stage, and hopefully launch before the end of the year. Brilliant.
Sorry, can I just add one thing? Hi there. Orlando, sorry, my name doesn't seem to be working.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I'm not actually based in Croatia and haven't got a huge affiliation with Croatia, haven't been that much, but I'm a post-university graduate living in London, and I'm in the sort of process of looking for any kind of work, particularly in this area. I was wondering if you're looking for people over in the sort of London area to help out with anything as well, whether that be an internship or work experience or anything that could help.
We can definitely speak afterwards. Sure, we can get you to pull a list together of all the Croatians living in London that we can go and speak to. Ideas like that. We spend a lot of time pulling up contacts with the British Croatian Society, who wrote to us yesterday, and various other networks and businesses that we should be approaching. You know, all sorts of useful things that people can do. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Yeah, we will send a follow-up email, and thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.